I've done over the couple of years.
Thank you. Wait. Larry Houston.
I'm really glad to be here with all of you guys. It's been a wild ride for me producing the show that you guys all enjoyed back in the 90s. And it's really satisfying to know that all the effort I put into the show, it made a difference. Because I've been a fanboy ever since I can remember back in there. I'm pretty old, I was back in the 60s, reading all the Stanley comics and X-Men and Avengers and all that stuff. And it was like when I got a chance to work actually for Marvel Productions, with Stan Lee. It was like the one time that all of that, I won't say, it's kind of useless trivia, I knew everything backwards and forwards. It came in handy working at Marvel Productions. And so at that time when I was working with Stan and Rick Holberg and Will Mineo, there's a pilot you guys might not remember called Pride of the X-Men. We got it working with our boss. It was between Stanley and Margaret Lash. They found the money, and we tried to put a pilot together. And we got a really good Japanese studio, and we did our best to put together basically like a pilot to try and sell to the 3 networks. Because we only had 3 at the time, was ABC, NBC, CBS. And we did our best, we put it out there, and they had no idea what we were trying to do. You know, these characters are being hated and chased, and they argue, and what are you doing? You know, it was like, the zeitgeist was all wrong. I mean, back then, a successful show was either Scooby-Doo or Super Friends, and they didn't understand what we were trying to do. And so, fast forward, my boss, Margaret Lash, left Marvel to become the CEO of Fox Kids. And that's when she called me up, Will Mineo, Eric Lewald and his wife Julia, and a couple of others, and he said, we're doing the X-Men. And she was able to greenlight it, and that's how come you guys got it on the air. It's because of her efforts. And now, for me, at that time, I was very open to having new artists come and show me their stuff. Because I wanted to get the best people working on the show, people that knew the X-Men like I did inside and out. And one of the persons who came to me with just his portfolio was my friend Dan Wiesenmeyer here. He came and showed me his samples, and I said, wow, this looks good. And here's a script, go for it and see what you can do. And he did an excellent job. And he worked on seasons 4 or 5 together. How many seasons?
2 through 5.
2 through 5. So he was with me almost from the beginning. And so he did an excellent work, and he has gone on to become the artist for a lot of the toys you guys are seeing coming out all of a sudden. The packaging art for the Morph and all the other characters, Storm, everybody. You just showed me some on Facebook, some of the good stuff that you were doing.
Hasbro Marvel Legends.
Yes. So if you've seen any of the new toys where you have, Storm and Morph I just saw. That's because of this guy right here. More. And one of the other writers who's been with us almost from the beginning, who knows as much of the X-Men lore as I did, was Steven at the end, one of the writers for the X-Men. He's done other work, but what I remember is that he did like Long Shot. He did the episode with McNeil in the island.
Sanctuary?
Sanctuary, that's the one, yeah. And
one of my favorite titles ever, Weapon X Lies in Video.
Yes. Yeah, and so like, a lot of the best stories are from my crew here and myself, except we were blessed to be in a position to be fanboys and also to be in a position to use our professional skills to put together something that you guys all enjoy. And so it was a great time working on the show. And I had a great run at it. A lot of the fun I had was adding all those little cameos that you guys picked up here. Yeah, the story behind that is that in the first season, well, I should say, my philosophy when I put the cameos into the shows was that I would put them in, but only if they didn't interfere with the original stories that the writers had written. And so I found a spot in the first season to put Spider-Man. Yeah. And the guy said, and went to the system and they said no. And they never gave me a reason why. So I said, okay. Then someone wrote an episode, I can't remember the writer, but he wrote an episode called Slave Island. And it had a couple of speaking parts, but it had these mutants like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Remember, no internet. I had to go home, bring my collection to work, put on a Xerox machine, and then I told people, okay, make this one Mystique, make this one Sunfire, make this one. I picked all these Marvel characters for these cameos, but I kept the original names that the writer wrote. So they were called Mutant 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you guys knew who they were. But to a regular audience, they were just like regular mutants on this slave island. And so when I submitted all those drawings into the system, I heard nothing. Oh, okay, I know how to do this now. And that's how all of those cameos got put into the show. One of the ones, famous ones I put in was the Black Panther. Yep. He was called African Mutant number 3.
That was in Sanctuary, I think, wasn't it?
Yes, it was in Sanctuary. It was in your story too, yeah. And so I got a chance to, Doctor Strange, if you look around, he pops up here and there. Clea. I think that's the first time when we got Deadpool. I had morphed changed into Deadpool a couple of times. And at that time, it was a brand new character. People didn't know who he was. And so, I got a chance to meet him first. Got him out there. There were a lot of little things that I was able to course correct throughout the series that, if the artist I was working with, because basically I was the director working with about 15 different artists. When they gave me the work back, I would course correct, like if they did something that didn't follow the mythology of the books, I would just redraw it. Or if the writer wrote something like, I had a writer, not you, but I had a writer write something like, Storm creates a storm that she spins around like this, like a tornado. And I saw it on the script and I just took my pen and went, scratch. And then I just wrote what she would do, that kind of stuff. So I was able to catch a lot of things that if you guys had seen it, you'd be going, what the hell? What was this? So I was able to catch a lot of stuff and keep the series what I really intended it to be. I wanted it to be a living comic book. I wanted to take the comic book and put it up on the screen for all of you guys to enjoy, for me to enjoy too, and also to be able to be proud of what I had done. And so, to that extent, I'm very grateful that you guys appreciated all the efforts that I did. And thank you. Yeah. So, Dan, you got anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I always like to tell the story about how I got hired on the X-Men because it's kind of unbelievable. And it's always good to hear when you're a young kid who's drawing out there and dreaming to do some kind of passion career with your art. I was a kid in Minnesota who was trying to break into doing storyboards and TV animation because, like Larry, I grew up with comics and animation I loved. And I thought I could do that. Oh, that's easy. I could probably figure that out. Read some books, took a little film class, all kind of stuff. And I had seen the show and I would get a magazine called Animation Magazine at the time, and I think there was an ad in there from Braz Studios looking for artists.
Okay.
And there was a phone number in it, and I just cold called this studio in Hollywood, and I said, hey, you guys looking for artists? I'm an artist, can I talk to somebody about that? And they would put me into Larry's phone, and Larry picked up the phone, and I'm thinking, you know, like, I'm gonna talk to this producer, you know, I gotta play it cool and, you know, pretend like I know what I'm doing, right? Like, you know, like I've been around the block. And Larry gets on the phone, and I was like, hello, sir, I like to draw comics, you know, and I think I can do a neat can draw good for you. And to Larry's credit, he always likes to give somebody a shot, somebody new to the biz, which is, I got lucky with Larry. And so I sent him some samples that I, you know, found recently, and they're really awful. And Larry liked them, and then he sent me a script from a Captain Planet show that had already aired. And it was a few pages, and said, storyboard this and send it back to me, and we'll go from there. And so the FedEx package arrives. I immediately sat down and did the whole thing all night long. And finished it in the morning, and in those days we had fax machines we would use. I faxed it back to your office before you got back the next day. And I think that alone was like, oh, well, this guy's really serious, you know, so give him a shot. Because, you know, at least it shows the passion and the dedication that, you know, I'm a guy who's going to show me the work. And then from there, you could work with me and teach me some things and that kind of stuff. And we were just off to the races. He sent me a script like 2 weeks later, and I think the first one was in season 2, where Rogue and Storm went to Africa. I can't remember the name of it. Whatever.
Oh, yeah. I think that's the one where
we
discover she has a stepson or godson or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, and I just did that, and then I got another script, and another script, and another script, and went all the way to the end of the show. And the cool thing about once you break in, you meet people, and producers go to other studios, and they call you up, and they like your work, and so it would just keep dominoing effect through the 90s, and I would work on a lot of cartoons in the 90s. And, but X-Men is the thing I worked on the longest, and I loved it, and it's great to be doing a lot of like licensing now, packaging and products, and talking to fans about it. It's just great.
Stephen, how did Eric and Julia approach you to do work on the series?
I got involved. X-Men was actually my very first professional writing job, and what a treat it was to kind of start at the top. I mean, I was very, very lucky. But it's tied into what you were alluding to earlier, which is the Fox Kids Network. And I just want to pause for a moment to acknowledge that without people like Margaret Lesh,
yes,
Sidney Iwanter, Roland Poindexter, all these people at Fox Kids Network, I don't think animation would be where it is today, because they had a mandate to create like really high quality shows. And it kind of started with a lot of Warner Brothers product with Tiny Toon Adventures and Animaniacs and Batman the Animated Series. So that when a showrunner like Larry and the Lewalds came along to do X-Men, they were not only encouraged, but, you know, asked to push the envelope and create a sophisticated superhero show that was very different from what we had been seeing on TV for decades prior, like the Super Friends and whatnot. So.
Yeah, and we were lucky that a lot of shows that you put on the air, the one person that can kill everything is the censor person, the broadcast standards and practices that you want to try and push something and go, oh no, that's too bad. Oh no, you don't want to do this. We got on this series, there's like the alignment of stars of having this lady, Avery Colburn, I think her name was.
Yeah, Avery, yeah.
And instead of being a woman a person that was only dealing with cartoons, she actually came from live action. And so some of the sensibilities that the writers wanted to write, push the envelopes, like the Nightcrawler with the religion and push things. She was open to it. And so she allowed us, you know, within boundaries, within guidelines, to push the series past what would normally have been like Super Friends and stuff. And so we were lucky to have Avery on board for all of the stuff that we were doing, you know.
There were still, this was also a very interesting time in terms of broadcast standards with Peggy Charon's focus on the family. There was a lot of, the TV shows, especially for children, were under a microscope from sort of the moral majority crowd that was worried that our shows would be a bad influence on kids. So they were very sensitive to depictions of violence and things like what they considered imitatable violence, or somebody like crashing through a window. You couldn't show someone crash through a window because of broken glass, or, you know,
stick their claws in somebody's skull.
Yeah, those would fall on the point for some reason. I'm not sure why. But you know, Batman, this is the thing I told Sydney. I was always upset that, you know, we had the episode of Nightcrawler, and the villagers were coming after him because of his look. And they had pitchforks and had laser guns. I'm going, why do they have laser guns? Whereas on Batman, they got Tommy guns, shooting everything. And I talked to Sydney about it, and he said, oh, they're called Deco.
Yeah.
Deco guns.
The Dark Deco.
Dark Deco, that's what it is. Dark Deco, it's like, what the hell is that?
Well, they didn't look like an assault rifle or something that existed in the real world. They were more fantastical.
Right, and it was like, so like, there are things like when there was a scene of Sabretooth, I was gonna have him jump out of a window. And they came back, no, he's got to throw a chair through the window first. And then jump through it.
Very calmly go over and raise the windowsill.
Yeah, it just like, okay, whatever. You know, I had a lot of little anecdotes like that. You know, luckily with Adria, she didn't shut down the line. It was just those little minor things. It's like, okay, I can deal with it as long as I can get the rest of the story out. And she was great for that. I'm trying to remember some other anecdotes about. I remember putting in certain scenes that were not written into the show. There's one where Juggernaut takes on Gladiator. Oh. And there's a punch where, you know, it's like, I know the fans who will like sit, it's Juggernaut versus Superman, what would happen? And that wasn't in the script, so I said, the fans are gonna love this. So I drew that scene that you guys might remember. It wasn't in the script, but it was like, I know the fans loved it. There are little things like that I would pepper throughout the series to try and make sure that it was something that you guys could respond to, that you guys would enjoy. And that being a bad wife, that, you know, my criteria for me is like, if I can draw something or redirect something, and it makes the 9-year-old kid inside of me excited, it makes me think, okay, I'm on the right course. I'll keep doing this, I'll keep doing that. And I did a lot of that throughout the series, peppering it here and there. And it was, you know, very satisfying. And yeah, I'm very, very happy for how everything turned out, especially, you know, I tried to put a lot of effort into that Phoenix, Dark Phoenix saga. There are certain scenes in that series that, like, I think it's when they're fighting on the moon. I directed the storyboard guys, if you can find a panel in the book that John Byrne drew, put it into the show. You know, find panels, find stuff, because I want this to be almost like a living, breathing comic book series. And there were some key scenes here and there, and there's scenes where, like, Lalandra's talking to the Kree and the Skrulls, and there are little pieces here and there, but that, just so you know, it was deliberate to try and do that for you guys, and to make the show more enjoyable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very lucky to have been in animation. Believe it or not, I was not, my first job wasn't in comic books and stuff. I had no idea, I was kind of wandering, so I was working for McDonnell Douglas, fixing computers all over, believe it or not. And I had friends working at Hanna-Barbera on Godzilla and Janet the Jungle and stuff like that. And mainly through Mark Evanier. He said, come on, calm down, you know, give it a shot, give it a shot. So I went to Filmation and I didn't do my due diligence. They just said, here's a job. Okay, I want it. So when I took the test, failed the test twice, just so you know. It was a layout test. My artwork was not strong enough. But the guy in charge of layout, his name's escaping me right now. He saw that when I was in high school. I used to draw my own. I think some of you might have done it. You're in high school, you draw your own Fantastic Four. You draw your own adventure, your own characters. And he saw that I had been drawing my own stuff. So he said, you know, you might be better to do storyboards. And in the back of my head, I'm going, what the hell is a storyboard? I literally had no idea. So they took me upstairs, introduced me to the director of storyboards, and gave me a test. Didn't seem to be that hard. I took it home, brought it back. I impressed him because, one, I did it fast, and that's one thing we all know, Dan knows, that if you can do something, turn it around, they respond to that you can turn it around and it's good. And it looks, you can get employed that way. Anyway, he saw what I did. What I didn't realize was that it was a live script everybody was working on that floor. And he liked what I did. He actually put it into the show, and then I got hired. And that's how I got into animation and Filmation. That was my story. And about a year after Filmation, that's when Stanley hired me to work at Marvel Productions on the syndicated Spider-Man and Spider-Man's Basic Friends, and then G.I. Joe the movie, moving on to, I think it's Captain Planet. And then somewhere in this, there's a whole, I'm probably mixing up, but the next one was the X-Men, I think, out of some other stuff. So my career has kind of been like this, but it's always been geared, I didn't realize it, to work in this industry and drawing animation, so I'm really glad how things turned out.
One of the things that's really great about that I found about working in animation is not only it's fun and we're playing with all the characters that we grew up loving, but traditionally there's never been enough money or fame in animation to attract the jerks. So most of the people you work with are actually really nice people.
Yeah, and it's a very warm, environment of people having similar likes and wanting to do good stuff and good work. And back in the 80s and 90s, for me, was like the best period of my career because I was working on almost all the action adventure shows and having fun drawing it. And the shows I feel mostly closest to are the ones that I was actually to be in charge of, that I was able to direct. In being a director, I was able to shape the entire vision of the show to make it something fun. And as opposed to being a storyboard artist, where most shows are like a 3-act show, and you get to do 1 act, so you're trying to do your best work, but you can only make so much. You can only influence it so much. So I prefer being a director, and it's been fun. I retired. I retired back in 2015, and thought that I was just going to do comic book, conventions and stuff, and then Disney/Marvel called me up saying, we're going to be doing this Marvel X-Men 97. Are you interested in working? So for one thing, I was quite surprised because traditionally in Hollywood, when they're going to reboot something, they never go back to the original people who worked on it. So I was like, oh, cool, yeah, I'd love to be involved. They called myself, they called the story editors, Eric and Julia Lewald, so we're all 3 consultants on the new series, which should be coming out end of next year.
Oh.
So,
And that's right, really brought a 5-minute clip from the show.
Say what?
Oh, we forgot it.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah.
Disney's lawyers are
I know. Yeah, I mean, believe me, Disney lawyers are really good at writing down to the infinity and universes beyond that I can't say anything, I can't do anything unless they tell me. So all I can do is say I'm happy.
Nobody's going to say anything in here.
Yeah.
I think you're safe. You can tell us, you know, does Morph come back?
You're putting me on the spot here, I can't say anything.
I'm going to get Larry throwing at Disney.
But what I can say is that I've seen some sequences, action sequences, they look great. And all of the people involved that I've dealt with in production level, or directors and artists working on it, they're all fans of the work, of the show. And so they're all doing their best to do something that you guys are going to be impressed with. And so on that level, yeah, it's going to be something you guys you're going to like, you know. And so, unfortunately, I can't say anything. I wish I could, but that's all I can say about 97.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't remember what else to say. Maybe I should just open up the questions.
Let's talk about our boards a little bit, or process for boards. One of the things about the storyboarding on the X-Men that I learned really fast, that Larry specifically wanted boards that were very, very rendered. Like they would almost look like comic book panels, and they have very specific direction. And the characters would look on model. And if you look at a lot of storyboards for movies or animation, they're drawn very quickly because the production process is like lightning fast. You got it done like yesterday to get it overseas and get the animation going. So a lot of board artists are draw shorthands. They're stick figures. They got 2 dots for eyes. That's supposed to be, you know, some drama, you know. But Larry wanted to have very rendered boards because that helps the overseas studios be able to draw better, be able to convey emotion better, to do the action better. And that was very prevalent in the X-Men show. And when you go back and watch it now, it had a lot of good heart in it. And that was because we started from drawing from square one as strongly as we could. So those boards, you know, we put a lot of effort into those.
Yeah.
They're beautiful. A lot of those boards. There's some artists that were on the show, and I've never met some of these artists, and I would just be floored by their skill.
Yeah, I was surprised that they put so much effort into it because we had no time. I had no budget. We had to like get the scripts out, get the boards in. I had about a week to fix like 500 pages to go through it and make sure it works, and then ship it to the timing director. Sorry, and then as that's going, boom, I get another 500 pages I got to go through. And it was like that for like every season's like 13 episodes. And so I was cranking, trying to fix and make sure it was a show that I could be proud that my name is on, but also to make sure that it was exciting, to make sure that it was something that people hadn't seen before, that it would register. Like I think it's, for me, people ask me what was my favorite episode. And I have to tell them, you know, I loved all the episodes, but the one that gets me is like episode 13. The last one's called The Final Decision, where you know, it's the X-Men versus all these Sentinels. And you have to remember back then, I had no guarantee of a season 2. It was like, that was it. That was my swan song. It's like, if I have to make this the best episode I can. And so I went through, that one I went through it. I took almost 2 weeks to go through bit by bit to make sure everything was working as best I could. Like there's a sequence inside of the cave where it's black, the Sentinels go white, you see Wolverine. It's Wolverine versus the Sentinels in a black, dark strobing effect. And I had seen what the board guy drew, which was competent, but it didn't excite me. So that entire sequence I made up from scratch to try and give it more oomph to it, to make it more exciting. There's a part where Xavier looks like he's going to go kamikaze on the giant Master Mold character. And then you see Magneto get on top and create a force field. None of that was in the script. I said, okay, I got to show that these guys work together. They have a relationship, even though they don't agree on mythology. And so when they destroy the robot and Xavier's floating down, they have their, back and forth. That wasn't there either. I made all that up because I wanted to reinforce that these guys were frenemies. And I just tried to make the last episode the best that I could. And we delivered the show. It was in post-production. And Eric, Juliet, myself, and our resumes. Don't find more work. We gotta pay our bills, gotta pay the mortgage. And about 2 hours before we're going to deliver to the network, we got a call. You gotta pick up season 2, but you gotta change that ending. And the original ending was Scott and Jean on a blanket talking about getting married, and it ends on a sunset. Xavier's like looking at him through a window, fade out, into the series. That was the original ending. But then they said, change the ending. So we had to repurpose the ending, and in post, we created this like bogus view screen with all these dots blinking and blinking and stuff. And I think her line was, you never know what the future holds, or something like that.
Sinister knows what your future holds.
Yes, and we wrote that on the spot. We grabbed one of the technicians and said, here, say this. So he said the line, and we futzed the line so it sounded electronic, and that's the ending you guys saw. So it was really made ad hoc, on the fly. And that's how we got Sinister. The guy who did the voice is not the one who ended up being Sinister. That was another actor. But that to me was my the one episode I remember the most because I figured that was it. I did my best, and I wasn't going to do a season 2, so I just tried to go out with a blaze of glory. And luckily, I got a season 2.
We should tell them that, to see a lot of the art behind the scenes of the show, there's a great book out there that was produced called The Art and Making of X-Men the Animated Series, which you can find on Amazon or your favorite bookseller, and it is jam-packed. We went through the archives, our personal archives, and pulled out all sorts of art.
Yeah. I'm kind of a pack rat, lazy pack rat, which my wife hates. And a lot of the stuff in the X-Men and other shows I've worked on, I just put them in a box and put them in a corner somewhere. And they've just been sitting there. And when Eric said, do you have anything? I went, I don't know. So we went into my storage and we were going through it, and that's when we found I didn't know I had it. I found my original X-Men introduction. The storyboard was all there. And so I was like, oh, that's nice. I thought it got lost, whatever. So he took that and he scanned it, so if you ever look at the art up, you'll see the original storyboard, which I storyboarded about 3 minutes of stuff, which it was like I was just letting my imagination go crazy. And then we culled it down to like 1 minute, 3 seconds. And so we took that and chopped it up, and Will added a new opening, which is the jet and girls, and everybody flying like this with the logo. And from that point forward, I added more stuff. And believe it or not, when I was doing that opening, I called New York. We need a logo for Storm. There's no logo for Storm. We need a logo for Jubilee. There's no logo for Jubilee. I said, when can you get it to me? Oh, maybe a couple of weeks. I'm like, I have to submit this tomorrow. There was no internet, so can you fax anything? I could trace it. Nothing. So when you see the logo for Rogue, I made it up. It was so fast. I had to turn stuff around. That entire intro, I think I had to do it over a weekend and draw that sucker out for what it was and then put it down. It was the first season was like crazy because on one hand, the good part is that the executives, there's certain, except for the ones that you mentioned, there are other executives thought we were doing it all wrong. We were doing the X-Men approach we were doing, characters fighting fighting characters, not liking each other. And, you know, to them, a successful series is Scooby-Doo or Superman. And said, no, that's not what we want to do. And they also thought the stories that you guys wanted to write were too sophisticated. And the one thing we all agreed on is that you don't write down the kids, you write up the kids. So that initially the kids will see the audience. I shouldn't say kids, the audience would be able to see initially the explosions and ray blasts and stuff that's going on. But as they got older, starting to reruns, you catch more of the adult subtext that these guys would put into the show, the relationship stuff, and the commentary on society in general. And that's one of the things that, thank goodness, we were able to get past the censors, you know, with Avery on our side, and do stories that push the envelope. You know, the Nightcrawler episode with the religious stuff and faith, you know, we were like, we can do that? Yes. So we got that done. And a lot of other hate groups and stuff, and trying to showcase, you know, that one line. I don't know if you wrote it, but someone wrote it. It's like, I think the guy was head of the Friends of Humanity or something, talking to Jubilee. She said something like, why do you hate us? And his line was so killer, his children was like, that you were born. I was like, ooh. But it was a good line. We have, I think it was it Michael Eating or Mark that passed away? I forgot.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Huh?
It was one of the Eaton's brothers.
One of the Eaton brothers, and they were really consequential to making a lot of the stories that you guys enjoy, especially season 1. And they really knew how to write, they knew how to write good character stories. It's going to be kind of strange to tell you this, but they didn't know the X-Men at all. They knew how to write good character stories, and I knew too much of the X-Men. It was like all in my brain and everywhere, because I knew the X-Men backwards and forwards, and so it was a good balance, because they could take these complex stories that we all knew and enjoyed, and they could distill it down to something that a person who never saw the X-Men could watch and view and enjoy. At the same time, I made sure that the stories were correct and followed the mythology of the books. So between the two of us, it was a good blend of our talents together to put together something that survives today. So, I don't know. You guys have any other questions? I can ask. We can do some Q&A stuff.
That's all the time we have.
So the ending you talked about for season 1, the original ending with the sunset is what aired the very first time that it aired, and I know because I had it recorded on VHS. The Sinister line wasn't added until just before season 2 came out, at least when it was on TV. So fun fact, we can add that to the second book. The question was why, at least in season 1, why was Jean always depicted as being weak and like moaning all the time and falling over? Was that intentional? It's just so inaccurate.
I think the writers could answer this better than I could, but I think the writers knew how powerful a character she was. She wasn't the fainter. I mean, her power, like when she went down with Scott dealing with the Morlocks, you saw how competent she was in doing whatever she did. She didn't faint. So I think it was more of the writing trying to, you know, it's like if you have a bad guy, Storm comes in, she goes whoosh in the story, you know?
Yeah.
You know, that's that powerful. So I think they were trying to balance out the drama so that everything didn't happen so quickly. I mean, that's my guess.
Fair enough. Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. My question is, what were you first like feeling or experiencing when you had found out like the theme song was going to be end up using the MCU properties that we've had recently? I lost it when I heard it on Multiverse and spoilers for this Marvel. But.
Yeah, the first time, I think you're talking about the Madness.
Mm-hmm.
Multiverse, yeah. I didn't hear it because everybody was screaming. Like, what? I see the floating chair, but I couldn't hear anything. I had to go there a second time when it was a little bit more calm. It's like, oh, there's a thing. Okay. So yeah, I enjoyed it. You know, it was great.
Thank you.
I just want to say thanks again for all your work. I super appreciate all you guys. X-Men's the Animated Series, one of the greatest shows of all time. My question is, what was the toughest thing about working on the show, and what was your favorite thing about working on the show?
The toughest thing on the show is that I had no time. I had to crank it out and get stuff done. The fun part about it though is I got to shape the show and make the show exactly the way I wanted it to be. Yeah. Because there were certain people who didn't believe in the show, they didn't micromanage me. And so I had final say on everything. And so that's how come what you see today is what I wanted to be on the screen. Today, you know, it's now owned by a corporation. So there are a little bit more hoops some of the directors got jumped through than I did. I just basically, I was like, I was just, you know, me, it was just me. And I did everything to make the show good.
Time is not your friend in animation production. It's a tightrope act. You're under the gun constantly for an entire year. If you're lucky, multiple years, but it flies.
Oh yeah, yeah, very true.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I just want to say that thank you for doing these panels. It's an honor to be in the same room with you for this show that meant so much to a lot of people. Do you have any, Larry, do you have any intel on if they're going to fix the episode order that's on the streaming platform? On the it's correct in both ways, and it's a big deal when you're watching the show and things just don't make sense.
Yeah, I agree. My understanding is that when Disney Plus put together the show, they followed the air dates as opposed to where things should fall. And that's why things were all out of whack, because sometimes production of certain shows, I mean, the animation looked really bad, so we had to send it back. And unfortunately, it gets lost in the continuity. It's like, well, I thought Gene was dead. Wait, yeah. Back. You know, and it needs to be put back in the correct order. And I've mentioned that. I've mentioned it several times to Disney Plus.
Thank you. As a kid, I thought I missed episodes here and there, and I was like constantly confused.
We'll call them up as soon as this panel. I'm going to call Ron Champion in a little while.
Yeah.
This one's for you, boy. Disney fixed it last night. As of last night, it's fixed.
Some miracle and popcorn.
It is.
I love so much the way you guys captured the essence of the comic book characters in the show, and I'm not sure you've ever been topped in that in any show before or since. So my question for all of you would be, how do you correctly do that and take the material and translate it into something that is new but is the essence, as opposed to, like, you know, modern day Batman going down people with the Batmobile because it's edgy.
Right.
And my tack-on question for you, Larry, is promise me that Xavier isn't going to throw away a lightsaber. Because I really want to watch this new show if you're involved.
Okay. The first part of your question, say it again. The first part was
how do you do that? How do you distill the essence of something into a new show without losing it, without changing the characters and making them dark or emo for no reason? Or
because we're fanboys.
Yes, we're fanboys. We're not going to do that. But the other thing, basically, you know, you need to have a creative person involved on a show that actually likes the show that they're working on. And you need to have creative people, directors who want to, there's a reason why the property they're working on is successful, so just take what's there, put it on the screen. I mean, 101, that's what I was doing. The books are successful, put it on the screen. And you only change, for me, I only change things if I had to. I didn't change stuff because I could. you know, put my own ego in it. I wanted to make sure that everything was accurate.
And speaking for myself, my co-author, David McDermott, who we wrote like 8 or 9 episodes of the show together, we were huge fans of the comics going back to, we went to high school together in Colorado, and Dave actually got me into reading the X-Men books back in the early 80s. And so we had long boxes full of X-Men comics going back 10 plus years when we were writing on the show. And those, of course, were the days before Wikipedia, so when we were diving into an episode and we needed to know background material, we would scour the comic book stores in LA and look for specific back issues. We spent a couple $100 like buying obscure back issues and the Marvel handbook of the handbook of the Marvel Universe books that had those dossiers and all the characters. And so we wanted to be true to the canon and mythology that had been that had come before, because it was important to us as fans. And so we just tried to be true to the core of the characters, and the details around the stories were a little more fungible. But as long as I think you were true to the characters, the audience would believe it.
Yeah, the heart. Yeah. The heart was, as long as you maintained the heart of what the story was, I think it translated, even though the details might have changed. You kept the core essence and the heart of the stories.
Thank you.
Next.
Hi. Streaming services and cable really changed what you could do as far as violence and animation. I'd love to hear more about what you think of TV shows like Invincible or Rick and Morty versus what you produced, and maybe some stories about those workarounds you had to do back then.
Well, I'm not familiar with. I know Invincible, the comic book, but not the show. But I know that for us on the X-Men, we had to have Sentinels. Wolverine couldn't do anything. We didn't have Sentinels in this series. We had to have them cut loose on something, And so it was very essential that we had robots in that show. When Wolverine and Sabretooth would go at it, it was like a ballet I had to try and choreograph so there wasn't any, stabbings and stuff. It was like, it was a lot of work to show people fighting that are brutal and vicious and not, take each other out. So it was a lot of work on my part to try and keep the energy in action, but not do anything.
Great job.
Next.
Hi, I'm Chano from Mexico. I'd like to thank you all for the passion and the dedication you poured into the series. And I wanted to know how aware you are about the international success of the series, and some interesting pieces like the opening sequence song, having the character's name narrated, and some name adaptations like Wolverine called Gepardo and Rogue Titania. It's very different.
Oh, I'm not familiar with the title, with that opening in Mexico.
It's the same song, but just the names are narrated.
Oh, okay. Yeah, believe it or not, that was like probably the biggest problem. I won't say problem, but we had to negotiate because Stan wanted to narrate the opening titles, and we had to politically tell him, Stan, we don't want voices, we don't want words, we just want the music. And so that was a tightrope that we won, but Margaret was there with us to make sure it happened. Margaret and Will and me, and we got that done. But so that's why it's all music. But the other nations, they get when it goes to another country, they make their own choices, and so that's why it's different than today.
Hi, I just wanted to talk about, I think one of my favorite things about X-Men, the animated series and the show, was just this idea that the X-Men was this kind of motley, found family that kind of came together. And one of my favorite episodes was Externally Yours, the Gambit episode, where he goes back and runs into his old family. And at the end, my favorite line was always, when he's leaving, he leaves the ring for Belladonna, and he says, I'm not a thief or an assassin, I'm an X-Man.
Right.
And then he leaves with Rogue and the rest of the X-Men. And to me, that always resonated with me because, growing up, I kind of did the same thing with my friends, is we all kind of found each other and had that strong family connection. So I wanted to ask you guys, was that something that you guys kind of thought about when you were writing the show, or were there any other like predominant themes that you kind of wanted to sew into the writing of the show?
All of those stuff that you talked about, it came to us at the last minute because we called Marvel up for, give us his background, because his background was pretty open. And they barely got to the writers in time. But for me, it's like this character called I think she's the external. I asked them, I said, send me some drawings. What does she look like? What does he look like? They had nothing. So the external is the only character that I created from nothing. And I made her to, I drew her up as the external. She has the long hair and stuff, and I cobbled together different designs to create the character. And like 5 months later, it's the blind guy. He's the it's like, you guys didn't give me anything, because I always want to try to follow the books, but I got to get production done. It's got to get done. So that's the one character that doesn't follow the existing mythology because they were late.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, first of all, I just want to say how thrilled and honored I am. Larry, you are my hero. I have met you a couple of times. You've given me autographs, and I'm so excited to see you here. Thank you for all your inspiration from when I was a kid up until now. I do have a question. Just as an artist, why don't you include a deaf character or a deaf community with a superpower like a mutant?
I would love to do that. I will pass that on to the people who are in charge of 97.
Woo! Oh, that would be great.
That was an awesome suggestion, by the way. First of all, I want to tell you that, growing up, I used to run from school to my house because I was that excited to see the episode. It's one of the only things growing up that made me extremely happy. So I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels that way. And my question is there was so much character dynamics and personalities that made X-Men the family that it was, but specifically Wolverine, who was responsible for making him such a badass?
Well, it started in the comic books, obviously. That's what happened, but we were looking for an excellent voice for Wolverine because we had other attempts, and we decided to go, instead of with regular cartoon voices, we went to Canada and went to stage actors. We wanted people who worked not in cartoons every day, but who did stage acting. And we had this one guy named Cal Dodd who came in, and he did this Wolverine performance. It blew us away. That's how we found him. But we had a lot of other trials for other Wolverines that didn't. It got close, but he nails it, And the nice thing about it is that when Cal tells me this, that when they did the live action Wolverine, I can't remember the actor's name, he went to go talk to Cal about it. Yeah. About the doing Wolverine. He talked to Cal about it. But so yeah, we were so damn lucky to get Cal because his everyday career, he's a singer. He doesn't do cartoons. And his agent said, come on down, they're doing it, and he just reluctantly came down and nailed the part. And the same thing with the actress who does Rogue. She was not.
She's here!
Yes. She did her audition, she nailed it, we all yelled across the phone, don't let her leave the room. We've got to sign her up now. So we were damn lucky.
You guys did an amazing job, dude, and
thank you for making. Thank you.
show. Still waiting on
my mutant powers. So for the panel, who's your favorite character from the show? And then the second part is, how did it feel in that lull between the past when it ended and now when it's revived? The internet kind of kept it alive with memes. So the Wolverine, I'm the Juggernaut Bleep, which made an excellent movie. How did you guys feel with that? And what's your favorite character?
To me, I feel like the memes were there because it kept the show alive from, when it ended in 1997, I believe, until now. So it kept the interest going everywhere. I forgot, what was the other part of your question?
Who's your favorite character on the show?
I don't have one. I like them all. So it's like, the one that people may not pick up on is like Bishop, There's also Wolverine, everybody's well, it's hard to pick which one of your kids you like.
I like Rogue.
Thank you guys.
I just want to say thank you again. We heard it all this whole time, but it really did for generations to come with X-Men. So my question is this. With such a large roster of the X-Men, how did you arrive in deciding who made up that cast?
That was do you want to take?
Oh, I wasn't involved in that. That's all you did.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, basically what it was when we got the contract to do the X-Men, the X-Men roster is huge. And so we first had to cull it down because we only had 22 minutes to do an episode. And in order to get each character their day in the sun, they had to take it down to a certain number that they thought was workable. And some of the characters that we didn't use came from Marvel East, Marvel Comics. They said, okay, we're not going to do Cyclops, but we have this new character called Gander we want you to showcase. We didn't want to do Shadowcat, but we have a new character called Jubilee. So they had these new characters they wanted to showcase in the show that I guess it had been out maybe about a year or something like that. They hadn't been out very long. And so that was part of it. I mean, in the original series, Beast wasn't even in it, neither was Jean. But when they started writing the stories, the team dynamics demanded like Jean be a part of the group. And all of the writers loved Beast, the way he was written. So we put him into the show, but then we put him in jail, so he wasn't in jail. But we got cut back to him in jail, and so he was still part of the series. And so that's, by the end of the first season, he became part of the permanent group. And so that's how it happened. But it was kind of a compromise between us here and New York.
Thank you. Writing team shows and I'm sure directing team shows is very difficult when you've got 6 or 8 characters. You're doing what you call air traffic control. You're trying to keep all the characters alive in a scene or doing something interesting, give them each some cool moment or some function in the story or in the scene, and also finding a villain that is a match for a whole group of heroes. And then if it's a villainous team, then you've got twice as many characters to deal with. So you'll notice a lot of times in the show or shows like that, they'll find ways to split the team up or take some of them, like put them in jail for for an episode so they're not doing anything. Or one character goes off on a solo adventure or a duo adventure.
Yeah, because that one character being there would just, whoop, story's over.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
So, getting back into cameos, who are some characters that have come out since the original animated series ended, who you would love to see featured in X-Men 97, hypothetically?
Oh, that is a good slide.
I don't know if I can answer that question. Although I do want to. I don't think I can answer the hypothetical, I'm sorry. But,
I really wish we had more time for X-Men 97 questions. That'd be so fun. Just watch me sweat for the next.
Sorry.
Somewhat loosely on topic there. Even though there's X-Men 97 coming out, a few years ago, the comics division did X-Men 92, which was sort of their interpretation of how the series was continued. Did you guys ever check out those comic books, and was there anything that you found interesting from them?
I thought they did a nice job, but they were basically taking stories I think that these guys had written and did their own spin on it, trying to keep the series alive and adding more detail and having some fun with it. That's my best recollection of it. Wish the writers are here because they can tell you more about, because they adapted their stories, you know. So
Turnabout is fair play because we definitely did some adaptations of
their stories. Yeah,
their stories. So yeah, it's only fair that they do adaptations of
ours. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Could you talk about what was going on behind the scenes on the last season of the X-Men, and why the animation was different from the rest of the series?
Oh, what happened?
We did get a wrap-up sign.
Yeah.
just know that that is a very, very long answer. And if you buy the art and making of the X-Men the animated series, you will get your answer.
That sounds good. No, I was a director the first 4 years of the X-Men, and then the 5th year, Marvel called me because they wanted me to direct the 2nd year of the Fantastic Four. So they hired me away from the X-Men the 5th year. My assistant director took over, Frank Scolacci took over, and then unfortunately once I got out of the picture, the guy who was funding everything, which is Saban, decided I wanted to make more money, and so he decided to send it to a cheaper studio. Unfortunately, I mean the writing was there, but the look changed because he wanted to make more money. So he went to a lesser studio. He let contracts fall apart. So, but my guys here, the writers, they did their best to do some great episodes, but that's why the look changed. So, I guess that's it.
Speaking of that, just reminds me of a funny story when the Lee Waltz convened the writing team at the Saban headquarters for a story summit to break a bunch of stories. And we were all sitting in this giant conference room with about a dozen of us sitting around this table pitching stories, and we had brought in some lunch, and we're eating lunch, and the door opens, and Haim Saban pokes his head in, and we thought like, oh, it's an X-Men writers room, like, oh, this is great. It's our #1 show on television. It's great work. He says, "Who's paying for the lunch?"
This is the guy that owns Power Rangers. He's making tons of money. Yeah. So that's fine.
That's why he's a billionaire.
That's why he's a billionaire. That's true. And we're not.
He said it's all the time.
So I guess thank you guys for all showing up.